We've all posted family photos online, right? Of course. But what if a company, let's say your bank, just grabbed one of those photos and slapped it into an advertisement without asking you? Sounds wild, but it's not just a what if. It's a true story, and we're about to dive into the official investigation.
So let's just put it out there. Could your bank legally use your family photo in an ad without getting your permission? Just think about that for a second. You're scrolling through your feed and bam, there's a picture of you and your kids selling a new savings account. You definitely didn't sign up for that. So is that even allowed? Well, that exact question is at the very heart of this case.
Okay, so our story really kicks off when a data protection authority decides to launch a full-blown probe into a financial company. They weren't just acting on a whim. There were some serious concerns about how customer data was being handled. And this right here, this is the actual document that started it all. So you've got two main players. On one side, the regulator, Kenya's Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. We'll just call them the ODPC. And on the other side, the company being investigated, a credit financing firm called Capital Sacco. Basically, the ODPC saw something that made them go, hang on, something's not right here, and they decided it was time to step in.
Now, there's a really key term here you need to know. Suo moto. What does that mean? Well, it means this whole investigation wasn't started because one person filed a complaint. Nope. The ODPC launched this thing all on their own. And that's a big deal. It tells you they believe this was a potentially massive issue, something so important for the public that they had to jump on it themselves.
All right, so the whole investigation followed a pretty clear timeline. It all kicked off in March 2025. Then, a few months later, in October, the regulators actually went on site to the company's offices. Capital Sacco submitted their official response right after that, and the whole thing came to a head with a final decision in January of the next year. This really gives us a great roadmap for how these things actually play out. So, what was the big deal? What exactly was the regulator accusing this company of doing? Let's get into the specifics of their case. The ODPC came out with some pretty serious charges. They basically said Capital Sacco was taking customer photos, and this is the kicker, even photos of kids, and using them for marketing without getting real permission. But it went deeper than that. The regulator also pointed out a total lack of transparency and a failure to give people any real way to control their own information. But of course, there are always two sides to every story. So how did Capital Sacco fire back against these accusations? Let's take a look at their defense. The company definitely didn't just roll over. They argued, hey, we're a properly registered data controller, and we have legal reasons for what we do. When it came to the photos of kids, their defense was that they got permission from, and this is a direct quote, mature adults. They also insisted they had all the right systems in place, opt-out buttons and data protection measures. And this right here, this is what it all boils down to. It's a classic he said, she said, but with data privacy. The regulator's argument is simple. You used people's photos, especially kids' photos, for ads without valid consent. End of story. The company's claim, no, we had a legal basis, and we got consent from the adults for any pictures of minors. This is the central conflict the investigators had to untangle.
So you've got two completely different stories on the table. The big question is, who's telling the truth? What did the evidence actually show when the investigators started digging?
And that brings us to the grand finale, the official determination. After looking at all the arguments and all the evidence, the regulator made its final, binding decision. Okay, finding number one. The investigation confirmed, without a doubt, that the website and the Facebook page using those customer photos for ads, yep, they belonged to Capital Sacco. So there's a direct line from the company to the problem.
Finding number two was just as clear. The investigators verified that, yes, the company's platforms were absolutely processing images of both adults and, this is the critical part, minors. And it wasn't for fun, it was for commercial purposes, to market their business.
And then we get to the knockout punch, the single most important finding in this entire case. And I'm quoting directly from the report, no proof of consent was provided. Wow. For all the companies talk about having consent, when it was time to show their work, they came up empty. I mean, to put it even more simply, the company's entire defense just crumbled. The report concluded they were completely, quote, unable to demonstrate that they had any consent forms or any system to even check someone's age before plastering their kid's photo online. Their arguments were just words, with zero evidence to back them up. So the final verdict came down in three main parts.
First, Capital Sacco was officially found to be non-compliant with the Data Protection Act. That's a big deal. Second, the regulators slapped them with an enforcement notice, which is basically a legal order saying, you have to fix this, now. And third, the company was given 30 days to appeal the whole thing in court if they wanted to.
And you can see it right here. This is what makes it all official. The signature from the data commissioner, dated January 9th, 2026. This wasn't just some suggestion. This was a legally binding order. Game over.
You know, this case is a really fascinating peek behind the curtain of data protection. It's a great reminder that these regulators are watching, sometimes even when no one has filed a formal complaint. But it also leaves you with a bigger, maybe more unsettling question. Okay, so this one company got caught, but how many others are out there doing the exact same thing? It really makes you stop and think. How confident are you that your data is actually being protected?